Great. So welcome all of you to this interactive session for doubt solving. Now whatever doubts I have received through emails and through the Facebook and other means, I have just collected those. I have the doubts here that we will be solving, but even besides the doubts that we are discussing right now, if you have any other doubt that comes up, you are free to put that in the comment box and we'll be looking onto those doubts. But the only request is I would like to cover these doubts first and then proceed with the doubts that are coming there, because it would be very difficult to manage otherwise. So let's first talk about one of the doubts. I guess this was sent by Rohini. I don't remember the names of the students who had sent in, so just ignore me for that, just excuse me for that. Now the first one here is, what pollutant causes cancer in human beings? Is it lead or pesticide? Now this is a really interesting question. Now according to the International Agency for Research on Cancer, there are 4 categories under which the compounds that lead to cancer have been discriminated. So it's group 1, group 2, A and B, then group 3 and group 4. Group 4 are those which are not carcinogenic. Group 3 are those which are not classified as carcinogenic for human beings. They might be carcinogenic to animals. Then you have group 1 and group 2. Group 1 are proven carcinogenics, for example arsenic, asbestos. Group 2 is divided under 2 categories, group 2A and 2B. 2A are those which are probably carcinogenic, for example glycophosphate. Now this is a common household pesticide. Besides that, the material used for tanning in the hide industries for leather, so all those are considered under probable carcinogenics. And then you have possible carcinogenics, that is group 2B, and that's mainly the beta hydroxy acid which is used in cosmetics, lead. So all those are known as possible carcinogenics. So those are the important carcinogenics that we have considered here. Now based on this, we can say you have probable and possible 2 categorization. So that's how we understand the cancer causing substances in human beings. The next question that was there was talking about the next number in the series 4, 8, 28, 80 and 244. Now the important thing to note here is the negative number binary we would be covering Ifrita. Then you have a question on assertion reason. Khadim will definitely talk about it in a while. Yes, we have uploaded the questions on environment, Shadi, so you can just check out the UGC paper 1 playlist for the same. Shivam has a question about phenomenology and grounded theory. I guess Shivam, you had this question before also. This is not related much to the content of paper 1, rather to the concepts for psychology more. So that's not basically within the ambits of paper 1 and not important for other candidates, so I believe we won't be touching that. CC license, that we have talked about in the previous lecture. I guess Karamveer, you can refer the last lecture on polity, the 25 questions that we have discussed in the morning for that. Now coming on to this question, we have the series that you can see is growing exponentially. So what's important here, it should be an exponent series first of all. So it should be in the power of cubes or 4th root or 6th root or something like that. So let's talk about the square roots. So let's say it's 3 raised to power 1 in the first case plus 1. In the second case it becomes 3 raised to power 2 minus 1. In the third case it becomes 3 cube plus 1, that's 27 plus 1. 3 raised to power 4 plus 1 and so on. So you would have 3 raised to power 4 plus 1. So this was plus 1. So this was plus 1, minus 1, plus 1, then minus 1 and then again plus 1. So here it would be minus 1. 3 raised to power 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 3 raised to power 6 minus 1 would be the answer for the next number, and that's how you solve it. Okay. So that's the way of solving this question. The next question here was, this is again an interesting question. We have one of the lectures on coding decoding problems for blood relations, not the lecture on blood relation but the coding decoding for blood relation, and this is what it is. So here you have to understand that various signs implies, let's say P plus Q means P is the husband of Q, P divided by Q means P is the sister of Q and so on. We have to say A is the daughter of B. Now, when I am saying A is the daughter of B, there is no direct relation that's given in the question. So, I have to find out an intermittent relation. And what could be the intermittent relation? I can first make this A someone's sister, and then that person would be the son of the other person. So, I would take into account two conditions. One is divided by, the other is multiplied by. Okay, so if I say A is the sister of, let's say, any other unknown variable, let's bring it as D. So A becomes the sister of D, and this D is the son of B. Then in that case I can say A is the daughter of B as well, because A is sister of D and D is son of B. So D is father of A as well. So you would have fourth as the correct option here. Okay, Asta has a question on symposium. So, symposium, conference, seminar, workshop, congress, all these 5 terms we have covered in a lecture. It would be live today. So, you can just refer it. Shubhangi has a question she can't understand. Can you please exactly mention what you can't understand so that I could better elaborate it again here? So, which question? Just mark out the question or tell, just put the numbers or something so that I can have better assist you. Okay. The P and Q question, this question, okay. So, in this question, again I repeat, we have to find out A is the daughter of B. So, I have to create a relation between daughter and the parent, but none of the relations which are given in the question show a direct relation between the daughter and the parent. It shows the relation of sister and the son. So, what I can say, let's say, A is the daughter of B, but A is the sister of someone which is D, and D is the son of B. So, B's son is D, okay, and his sister is A. Therefore, I can say B is the father of A or A is the daughter of B, and that's how we relate it. I hope that's clear now. And coming from the question here, you can just pick up the signs. So, let's say divided means sister. So, I can say A is the sister of D. That shows divided sign here. And then D is the son of B. So, this B becomes the father of A and D both, or A becomes the daughter of B, as simple as that. Okay. Devan has a question about number of comprehension questions. Monal, your question on applied and action I have already taken, so I will cover it in a while. Binary equivalent of decimal numbers, Raju, you have already sent in or someone else has sent in, so I will be covering it here. And one of the questions was regarding the comprehension. So, usually there are 5 questions on comprehension, one passage based on which you have 5 questions of comprehension, and one graph or pie or bar or any other based on which you have 5 questions of DI. So, that's the normal pattern that's usually there. Now, coming on to the binary. So, here you have Raju, you have the binary number and you have to find out the decimal equivalent. Now, how do you do that? It's as simple as that. You know how to find it for the other numbers. So, let's say 1101. For this, finding it is pretty simple. Okay, so for this I take 2 raised to power 0 into 1, 0 into 2 raised to power 1, 1 into 2 raised to power 2, and 1 into 2 raised to power 3. So, that's as simple as that. Now, what would happen beyond the decimal? Beyond decimal, let's say I have 101. So, what I will do is 1 into 2 raised to power minus 1, 1 into 2 raised to power minus 2, 1 into 2 raised to power minus 3, and so on. So, how do I solve it? This 2 raised to power minus 1, how can we write it? How can we solve it? It would be 1 by 2. So, it would be 1 by 2 into 1. It would be 0 into 1 by 4, that's 1 by 2 raised to power 2, that's 4, and 1 into 1 by 8. So, simply I can say you can in a quicker fashion remember it as 0.5, 0.25, 0.125 and 0.0625 beyond the decimals, and here you can remember it as 2, 4, 8, 16, 32 and so on. So if you remember it that means you have to just multiply it with 1 or 0. So with 0 I can simply ignore those values, and if it is 1 I have to simply add those values, as simple as that. So I hope you have this idea clear. I had a lot of students asking about binary numbers and conversion into fractional. So binary conversion into fraction and 2 and 4, we have also covered this in one of the separate videos which would be live shortly. So you can just again view that in case you have doubt still on that there. Okay, so that was about binary and the fractional or the decimal part of the binary. The next question that's coming up a lot is about the negative numbers. So under the negative numbers, what we do is you have 1's complement and 2's complement. So first thing to understand here is you can either have a direct question which says find out the 1's complement or the 2's complement. So if it is there, you have to find out 1's complement or 2's complement. If not, we assume it is 2's complement and we find out 2's complement only. Khadim has a question about a simple method to solve the blood relation programs through a kind of diagram. So definitely we have a good idea to solve the blood relation programs questions. So the idea is keep all the people in one age group or in one level at one hierarchy. So let's say mother, father would be here, grandmother, grandfather would be in the hierarchy, and then daughter, sister, brother, sisters all would be in this level. So all the daughters, sons or brothers, sisters, whatever you call them, would be in one hierarchy. So once you have a hierarchical diagram, that's very easy to solve. As I said, we also have a video on blood relation, so that would help you solve the problems on blood relation. Okay, coming on to the binary equivalent for negative number. As I said, you have to first ignore the sign. So take a binary for 19. So let's say for binary equivalent for 19 would be 10011. Okay, now what I do is I have to understand this minus sign. So this minus sign or a negative sign here would have to be denoted by certain value that should be given here. So I can put a 0 here to denote this negative. Okay, so beyond this I would put 0, but from the choices you can see these are 5 digits and you have 3 extra digits. So all the choices, since they are 3 extra digits, what I would do is I would put 3 zeros here. Now finding 1's complement is pretty simple. I just flip the digits. So all zeros would turn out to be 1 and all 1's would turn out to be 0. So that's 1's complement. So the binary equivalent in case of 1's complement for minus 19 would be this. Now if I want to find out 2's complement, what would be the case? For 2's complement, what I would have to do is simply add 1. Now since it's 0 and I am adding 1, it's very simple. So it would be 1 1 1 0 1 1 0 1, and that would be the 2's complement for minus 19 binary equivalent. Okay. Now, in case it was 11 and I had to add 1, in binary how do we add it? So 1 plus 1 would be 10, so you would have 0 and 1. Again 1 plus 1 would be 10, so it would be 100. So if it is 100, sorry, if it was 11 here and I was supposed to add 1, it won't turn out to be 2 here because it's a binary addition. We can work only in zeros and ones, we cannot include any other digit except 0 and 1. So if it was 1 1 plus 1, it would become 100 here, and that's how we solve a binary problem. So I hope that's clear. Shubhangi is asking about 2's complement. Okay, so and Ocean has a question, if negative number is given, then is it necessary to convert it into 2's complement, or we can just find the negative number in 1010 form. So to find out the negative number, either you will have to do 1's complement or 2's complement. If nothing is mentioned, you will go for 2's complement. So 1's complement is simple, you just flip on the numbers. So all zeros would become 1, all ones would become 0. Now once you have the 1's complement that has come up, you would add 1, Shubhangi, and you would have the 2's complement that would be calculated, and that would be here. Okay, I hope that was clear. Exingi, I hope that was clear again. Okay, Sangya has a question about solving DI questions more efficiently. So we have already covered many lectures on DI. We have covered 2 separate classes and 1 introductory class for DI. So across all those classes I have been telling 2 things. Approximation is one good technique to solve DI efficiently, and then another method to solve DI efficiently is working out through the negation technique. You can just remove the choices that you feel are not there. Okay, based on that you can understand. Again, for one's complement we will add 1. For after finding the one's complement, Shubhangi, you will have to add 1 and you would find out the 2's complement. I hope that was there. I hope that was clear. Okay. Now coming on to the next question here. The next question talks about, this is a kind of again an interesting question. So you have 10 lamps in a hall. Each one of them is switched on independently. So what could be the possibility? It could be a possibility of on and off. So 2 possibilities for 10 lamps. So how many total number of possibilities could be there? It would be 10 raised to power 2. So that would be the answer. So that would be the number of ways in which the hall can be illuminated. Okay. So that's how we draw it. Amrita has a question: in Venn diagram, which type of circle will we draw? One circle above second or second below the first. So Venn diagram, you usually draw 2 circles parallel to one another for solving a set question or a set or a Venn diagram question. However, if you draw even one below the other, it won't make any change, because what you have to find out is the region of only A, only B, or A and B combined, or B as a whole or A as a whole. So it does not matter whether you draw it simultaneously or one below the other. The answer would remain the same in either case. Okay. Vincent has a question related to geography, so that's basically from the core geography. However, the number of parallels with 1 degree interval can be drawn between pole on the globe. So it's 180. So you have 180, basically you go 90 degrees to the north and now 90 degrees to the south in case of latitude. Since you are asking about parallels, it's longitude, so it's 0 to 180 and 180 to 0 back. So it's 360 that you can cover up. So that's how we consider. So you have moving from Greenwich, that's 0 degree, you are going on to the international date line, which is at 180 degrees, and here again it would be 180 here. So 360 parallels that could be drawn in. So a kind of basic geography question. If you go on to NCERT class 6 chapter 1 or 2, I guess, where we have talked about longitudes and latitudes, you would find it covered there. Okay. Permutation and combinations usually is not a part of paper 1 a lot, but questions like these which we are discussing here, the question on illumination, Grishma, are discussed. So that's a kind of common problem that's being asked. So what we have to understand here is there are 10 lamps and each has a probability of either on or off. Now let's say the first lamp is on, at the same time the second could be off on, third could be off on, so all the combinations for them would go. So it would be 10 raised to power 2 number of combinations in which hall could be illuminated. The next here, the question is, if the statement is some men are cruel is false, which of the following statement is true? Now in a question like this, there are lots and lots of doubts coming up, because students think that this is a question from syllogism problem. Not at all. This is a question from square of opposition, and I insist again, just cover a square of opposition carefully. You have one sure question that would be asked from square of opposition, and you have to cover that for sure. Okay, and that's really very scoring. So what I recommend is just memorize this diagram that's there in the video, also in the square of opposition video that we have covered. Now since you have a question, you have some men are cruel is false, which of the following is true? So if this is false, what all conditions could be true? If this is false, this is true, and in the contradictory also, and in the sub-contrary also. So some are not is true, and none is cruel is again true. So some are not and none. So some are not and none. So both of those would be correct or true. So 2 and 3 would be the correct options here, Shivam. Good, you got it. Okay, Sangya has a question, how to solve questions related to direction and distance. Directions and distance we have covered in a separate lecture. You can just go on to there and solve it. Okay, so that would be clear. Rakhi has a question about data interpretation, calendar and direction. So again, those have been covered in the lectures. You can just refer. Archana has a question, a very good question, in fact, discriminating the difference between syllogism and square of opposition. So syllogism and square of opposition, the simple thing I always tell student is, under syllogism you would have one statement that would be given and said it is true or false, what would be the probability for the other, or what conditions would be there whether the other would be true or false. However, under syllogism you would have two statements where you would have three variables that would be given, and one of the variables would be repeated in the two sentences. So let's say all cats are birds and all cats are dogs. So here what I am trying to do, I am trying to repeat cat twice and bird and dog. So when I am drawing a syllogism Venn diagram, don't follow any other method to draw a syllogism problem, because this is the only method that would lead you to a correct answer. So you have cat, ball and dog. Now you can say all cats are balls. So since I am saying all cats are balls, none of the cats can be in this region. And then I am saying all cats are dogs. So all cats should be dogs. So none of the cats should be in this region. Now the region in which they are not there would be shaded. So these would be the region where they could exist. And based on that you have the syllogism problem that could be solved. I guess that was clear. Sarita is requesting me to be slow, but the questions that are coming up is very fast. So I have to meet up with the questions, otherwise the questions would go up and I'll miss many of those. So I'll try to maintain the speed, however. Okay, the next question here is, in a college, again a very interesting question. In a college you have 300 students. Every student reads 5 newspapers. Now, in how many ways these newspapers could be read without sharing? So in how many ways they could be read is 300 into 5, and that's without sharing. So without sharing, if the number of newspapers, the total newspapers that would be read would be the number of students into the number of newspapers read by each student. However, it's given that every newspaper is read by 60 students. So how many newspapers are required is divided by 60, as simple as that. So with this you solve the problem. Jyoti has a question about polity, main topics. Polity, constitution, preamble, then the contemporary happenings in polity are really important. So let's say the election of judge, then you have the nota issue that was released, the VVPAT issues that was in news recently, the audit trail that was in news, then you had the other issues related to elections, impeachment, elections of Rajya Sabha that recently took place. So whatever happenings were recent in the field of politics become important for your exam as well. Okay, the next question, Sajida has a very good question, how to maintain time in the examination. So maintaining time in the examination is pretty good. And then Sanaya has a question on number series. So that number series is pretty simple. You have one way it's going forwards and in the other it's going backwards. So that's how you maintain it. Regarding time management, I would recommend you solve all the questions at a go and then fill the OMR towards the end. I repeat again, filling the OMR, just keep 10 to 15 minutes margin. So it shouldn't be the case that you have solved the whole of the paper, but still you are left, the time went short and you couldn't fill the OMR. So that should never be the case. Okay, so that's how we understand it. And then you would have to explain that if you are weak in DI, leave the sections on DI for a later on section. Vijaya has a question about plum model, looping, fanning. We have already discussed that in the Gaussian plum model. So you can just refer that. However, that's related to environmental science, not for paper 1. So just for paper 1, students don't bother about it. Quantitative aptitude for paper 1, Neha, is really general and most of the questions you can directly solve. That's pretty true. So don't take a lot of tensions out here. Syllogism, this was an interesting problem that was given by one of the students. It says some flowers are red, some flowers are blue, and you have two conclusions based on this. You have to find out which of the conclusions is true or not. So let's draw it here. So I am saying some. For some we mark a cross. So if you have been following the syllogism classes, you would better understand it. So you have flowers red and blue. So some flowers are red. Now some flowers are red, could be here, could be here. So I would just mark it at the intersection of the two. Some flowers are blue, could be marked at the intersection of two. Based on that, I can say some flowers are neither red or blue. That's incorrect because I don't know about the other ones. So I cannot say some flowers are neither red or blue. Neither I can say some flowers are both red and blue, because it could be the case that all blue are here or all red are here or all of those are here. So from this sum, everything is in this region or this region, I don't know. So I cannot say both of those would be red and blue. So neither of the statements could be explained here. Monal has a doubt, she is scared, so that's the only thing I would say, that don't be scared. We would definitely have a kind of motivational video before your exam tomorrow. So just have confidence in yourself, refer to what has been read, then only you should have it. Vincent has a continuous question about, just let me read it. That's the number of parallels, not meridians, with 1 degree interval, how many could be drawn on the globe? So it's 180 that you are trying to draw in degrees. So when you are trying to say in numbers, it would be definitely 1 less than the original count. Okay, so that's how we try to understand it. Then you have the recent topics in polity, George. So George, the recent topics in polity, you can just go on to Examrace current affairs. In that, browse by category. 4 categories you have to cover. That's education, environment, polity and computers. So all the current affairs related to education, environment, polity and education, environment, polity and computers, I repeat, are important. Okay, so this was the syllogism problem that was solved. The next question is, which of the following can be termed as verbal communication? Now it's very important question, because you have verbal communication that includes both oral and written. Okay, so yes, Aman, nota is none of the above, and that was one of the recent issues in the elections. So it was in news, and it is important for your examination. Now oral and written both are types of verbal communication. So among this, you would have choice A and D. That's Professor Sharma delivered the lecture in the classroom and Deepak wrote a letter for leave application. Both of those would be part of verbal communication. However, if there is one that you have to mark, the more say would be a oral choice that you could mark up. Okay, Goisen has a comment that he is not giving any exam. Please don't do that. Just appear for the exams. You don't have the number of attempts that are being counted for your net. So just at least attempt it. It would give you confidence, and might be the paper is simpler for you this time. So the topics that you have referred are being covered for your paper. So Shalini has a question. What are the important topics of communication? So Cards and Khan model on communication we have covered. So 3 videos under communication that we have covered. Just cover that. Then you have classroom communication, verbal, non-verbal communication. Usually you have 1 to 2 questions that are asked every time. Aman has a question, how to start net paper 1, what should be strategy? Now are you planning to appear for the next December? Then you have ample of time. We do have a kind of online crash course and the postal course, you can refer that. But if you are appearing for next 2 days, the time is really short to decide or a strategy how to start on. So even if you have just 2 days in hand and you are looking for a quick revision, I would recommend cover the topics that are every time asked. For example, square of opposition, syllogism. If you are good at DI and quantitative, that could be covered easily. So you can leave those sections and focus on the sections of environment, the recent happenings in environment and polity. Okay, the next question here was, Trivandrum is coded as certain thing in a certain language. How would Madras be coded? Now this is a very interesting and a dicey question in fact, and I indeed faced a trouble solving it once, because the thing appears to be very confusing. The only way you can rule it out is understanding the fact you have 5 that is being repeated. So let me write it again, Trivandrum, and you have the numbers as 2, 5, 9, 5, 3, 5, 4, 7, 5 and 8. So what I am doing is, this is 5, this is 5, this is 5 and this is 5. So for many of the numbers you are marking as 5. So just ignore those and let's do the rest of those. So you would do Madras. So M is 8, so I put 8 here. Then I know D is 4, so I put 4 here. R is 7, so I put 7 here. Now, from the choices, I can say that this would be 8, 4, 8, 4, 8, 4 and 8, 4. Now, this is something that's repeated here. Now, what we have to take into account is understanding that you have the words that are repeated for this one, the fifth choice, that's R. So that's R is 5 here, okay. So R is 5 here, so you would put 5 here and you would mark R as 5 here. Now, which of those have 5? So all of those have 5. So again the same issue comes up. Then you have to check Madras, A again. So A is 3, so again you have 3. So the last option that goes is for S. Now S is something you have to predict out, and besides that you don't have any other option to do. So which of the number is not present here would be the case that would go for S, and from that I can say 6 would be the case. So I would have 6 as the option here, okay. The next question is, again this is a question from square of opposition. Many of the students were confused here, understanding that this is a question from syllogism. This is not a question of syllogism, I repeat again. Now this question you have to understand very carefully. You are given 4 statements. You have to select 2 statements in such a way that which cannot be true but both can be false. So both can be false. What could be the criteria for that? I am saying some and some not. So if this is false, this could be false is one of the criteria I am saying. So if both can be, the question says both cannot be true yet both can be false. So if this is false, this can be false, okay. So if this is false, this is false. So none and some not. If this is false, this can be false, but both cannot be true. So if this is true, this need not to be true, and if this is true, this is uncertain, or if this is true, this is false. So that's how we solve this. So you have to basically find out an expression where you will say that both would be false. So false condition would be true for both of those, but the true condition would not be true for both of those. And this is a pure question from square of opposition. A lot of question. Language is verbal or a symbolic code. So language, when it is spoken, it's verbal, and if it is through the gestures that you are trying to explain, it's a symbolic code. So basically if I am expressing through signs, let's say I am talking to a deaf person and it's through a kind of sign, so then we say it's a sign language, so it becomes a symbolic. Purnima has a question about binary equivalent. So binary equivalent, we have talked about it here, but we also have 2 short videos that would be coming up before your exam, so you can just refer that. Still, if you have doubt, let us know. Shekhar has a question about barriers in communication. How do we differentiate between low and high context cultural barriers? So that's a really interesting question that clearly depends on the choices that are being given in the question, and based on the choices you have to judge whether it is a kind of high contextual barrier or a low contextual barrier that is being provided. The next question here is, Mary has 3 children. What is the probability that none of the 3 children is boy? Now how do we find out? You have 3 children, and what is the probability that each of the none of the 3 children is boy? So there could be a boy or a girl in every, and there are 3 children, so the probability is 2 raised to 3, and the probability that none of the children is none of the 3 children is a boy would be 1 by 2 raised to power 3, that's 1 by 8, and that would be the correct answer here, okay. So I have a lot of questions available, questions up here. Yes, Shanti, this live video would be shared, okay. So symbolic language was again a question there. So symbolic languages, yes, we have the core idea here is we are working on symbols or pictographic means. So let's say Chinese language or Chinese script is pictographic, so it's symbolic, so we are using pictures or symbols to represent the language. The next question here was, this is again an interesting question. In a large random data set following a normal distribution, the ratio of number of data points which are in the range of mean plus minus standard deviation to the total number of data points is. Now how do we do this? Now when we draw a normal probability curve, we would understand that we have one standard deviation, then we would have a region of 2 standard deviation and 3 standard deviation. So let's say the region of 1 standard deviation is 67%, 2 standard deviation, mean plus minus, so it's always mean plus minus. So mean plus minus 2 standard deviation is 95% and mean plus minus 3 standard deviation accounts for 99%. Since this question does not mention anything else, we would consider this to be a 1 standard deviation, and therefore you would have 67 as the answer, because we on the basis we take 1 standard deviation as the basis. Shushma has a question about Likert scale. So Likert scale has to do with attitude ranking, and that's a part of psychology, so that's something that we would be covered under psychology. Okay, the next is in an examination. Now this is again an interesting question. The only mistake I believe students did while solving this question was counting the pass and fail. So let me draw a Venn diagram here. So when I am drawing a Venn diagram of Hindi and English, okay, so let's say 35% of the total students failed in Hindi. So this is 35% in Hindi and 45% in English and 20% in both the languages. So this whole circle is 35, this whole circle is 45. So what I can do is 35 minus 20 would be 15 here, and this would be 25 here. So now I can add these all up, so that would be 25 plus 15, that's 40, 40 plus 20, that's 60. So 60% of students failed. Okay, so that either I can do it that ways, or what I can do is 35 plus 45 minus 20, that's the common region, that's 70, 80, 80 minus 20, that would be 60. So 60% failed, and the question says who passed. So percentage who passed would be 100 minus 60%. So that would be 40%. So in that case 40% would be your answer. Purnima has a question about hypothesis testing. We have covered a class on hypothesis testing, the alpha and the beta errors. You can just refer that, the null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis, everything has been covered in the class on hypothesis testing. So that's as clear as that. The next question that we have here is the binary equivalent of minus 15 in 2's complement. So again the same thing that's repeated as previously. So the binary equivalent of 15 is 1, 1, 1, 1. Now since you have 8 digits that are given, I put 4 zeros here. Now these 4 zeros are denoting the negative sign. So what I do is I find the 1's complement, that is 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0. Now what I have to do is the 2's complement. So for this I would add 1 here, and it would be 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. So that would be the correct answer for the binary equivalent for 2's complement. The next question is pretty interesting. You have to find out minus 19 in the signed magnitude system. So what you would do in the signed magnitude system, so 19 binary equivalent is 1, 0, 0, 1, 1. Now in the signed magnitude I just put 1 in the first place. So if it was just 6 digits I would put 1 here, but since it's again 8 digits, 8 bit, so you would put 0, 0 and 1 in the starting. So you don't change this, you just change the sign, and that's how you understand a signed magnitude system. Okay. So I hope that was clear. Neeraj has a question about glimpses of the major scales. So yes, the nominal, ordinal, ratio and interval scales are there. Those are basics. So you can just refer those. So I guess that's very clear. So interval, you are trying to explain the difference between the two. Under ordinal, you are trying to rank. So let's say first, second, third, fourth. Then you have the nominal, where you just say good, bad, and you have the ratio, where we say the first is twice the other, the second is thrice the next, and so on. So those are the kind of 4 different attitude scales that we talk about: the nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. Coming on to the next question we have is from planning. The question here says, just scroll, when planning to do a social research, it's better to approach with an open mind, do a pilot study, get a literature review, or forget about the theory because it's very practical. Now, whenever you are trying to do a social research, looking up to the literature review is some of the primary things that you have to do. Unless and until you have seen what other people have done in that field, you cannot explain or understand the concept. Shubhangi has a question about sign magnitude. So yes, sign magnitude is as simple as that. You have to just change the first sign. So just find the binary equivalent. So for 19 it's 1 0 0 1 1. So just keep it as it is, and the initial digits, just change the first value from 0 to 1, and that's what is sign magnitude. Someone had a question, yeah, Sheikh had a question on ex post facto research. So ex post facto research is a research, we would be coming to that, is a research that occurs after a thing has happened. So post the thing has happened, we say it's a ex post facto research. Then so here the question on social research, review of literature is the answer, as simple as that. Then you have the pillars of constitution, that's an important topic. So you have legislature, executive, and judiciary as the 3 primary fundamental pillars that we say. Now under that you have judiciary, which is independent, executive that looks or has the responsibility over the legislature, and within the parliament you have, let's say, cabinet, which has the executive function, the prime minister and the president, which have the executive powers, and then you have the legislature as well, which is the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, which is law making. Melka has a question about calendar problems. So like if I would have an exact calendar problem, it would be easier to solve. However, for generally calendar problems, a key idea is you should remember a key trick, that's number of odd days in a year. So that's one thing, and calculated by number of weeks. So let's say you have for this year, if I am asking how many, what would be the day after 62 days. So what I can do is I can just multiply 7 by 9 and say it's 63. So if today is Thursday, 63rd day would be Thursday, but when I am asking about 62nd day, it would be 1 day prior, so it would be Wednesday. Similarly, for the year, you can do it as 365 days, just divide it by 7 and see what the remainder is. So you have to find out the number of odd days that remains for each year. So if I am saying the 1st January 2010 is Tuesday, what would be the 1st January 2011? So based on the number of odd days, you can say what would be the next, and then you can further remember it. So it's as simple as that. Again, you have to take into account if there was a leap year that was intermittent in that. So first of all, if I'm saying 1st January to 1st January 2011, I have to find out the February in 2010 was a leap year or not. If it was not, that's fine. If it was a leap year, I would have to add 1 more day. So that's a common thing that's being asked in the calendar problems. Coming on to the various speed, Sheikh has a question that his speed becomes slow when a doubt on a question comes in. So that's a common thing that happens with all the students while answering the question in the examination paper. So what I recommend is you can just leave those questions towards the end, mark it on the paper somewhere that the number of questions that you are leaving, and then you can just go back onto that question later on and understand. The next question was from the today's class, the morning session, that if there is not in the question and none of the above, I explained that, but some of the students got confused. Okay, now here what I was trying to say was, let's say there is a question which says which of the following is not correct, and I say 3 choices and then I say none of the above. What does this mean? if I mark this choice, this means this was correct, and this was correct, because it is not here and none here. If I say all, it would be incorrect because all of those are correct, but I am asking about which is not correct. So this would become false. And in this case, what we are trying to do is, if this is not and this is none, the remaining ones are true. And that's what I was trying to explain in the morning session. So if you would have a question, you would better understand that. Then you had a question about geometric mean of 4, 10, 15, 25 and 10 with the help of log. Now this is a kind of difficult question, usually not part of your NET exam, but still, since you have put up this question, let me solve it. So you have geometric mean could be explained since there are 4 numbers, so it would be 4th root of 4 into 10 into 25 into 10. So that's how you can solve it. But when you want to solve it with log, you would make it a kind of arithmetic mean with log of 4 plus log of 10 plus log of 25 and log of 10. Again, if you have the values for these, you can solve this. So then you would have to take the anti-log of this and solve to get the geometric mean. So first calculate the log of this and then take the anti-log to solve this question on geometric mean. So this is usually not a part of the NET examination, but yes, you should know how to solve a geometric mean, a very basic question. Then there were some questions from satellite, their types, bands of energy, wavelength and spectral band. This is something to be revised and learned, more applicable to students from geography background, less commonly asked, or I would say not asked for your paper 1, so I won't touch those. Then you have variance, standard deviation, correlation, again for the students which are having statistics in paper 2, this is more relevant. For paper 1, you usually don't go beyond the normal distribution, the mean, mode, median, the frequency and the flowcharts and so on. The next was the format of thesis writing. Now we haven't covered a lecture on it so far, but yes, this is important. The format of thesis writing, research paper, journal, article and a project report, all of those are pretty simple. You can just Google it and understand it. So log values, Ocean is saying, is difficult to learn. You don't need to learn log values in this case, because if there is a question like this, you would probably have the log values that would be given. Okay. Khadim has a question about not and none, repeat it again. So I guess just stating that I have confused you. The idea here is, if I am saying which is not a correct option, okay, that means that's wrong. Okay. So if I am saying A, B, C, D, A is correct, B is correct, C is correct. Okay. So then I am saying which could be incorrect. So only this could be the choice that is incorrect, and there I have none. Okay. So this none and not would cancel out. So that was the close idea, the sole idea that I was trying to say. Just forget it if you are getting confused with it. I don't want to confuse you more. But the idea is, if there is not, okay, read the question very, very carefully and see whether the choices are turning out to be correct or not. And if they are not turning out to be correct, then focus on the last phrase, whether it is all or none. So if I am saying all of the above, that means, and it is not there, and I am marking this as correct, that means all of these are incorrect. ये सारे गलत हैं. So that's the core idea that we are trying to say here. None of these would be correct if I am marking all here when there is not that is being asked. I don't want to elaborate it further because you might get confused again. Dhanya has a question about binary equivalent. So binary equivalent, again for the fractional and the decimal, we would have one of the videos that would be live shortly. For binary to decimal, binary to octal and hexadecimal, we already have the videos, so just refer that. Ocean has a question about syllogism. Those are confusing. If there are 3 statements and 4 conclusions, so if there are 3 statements and 4 conclusions, it's not syllogism problem. You have to solve it with Euler diagram. So you have a video on Euler that we have covered. You cannot solve it with the concept on the syllogism. You have to work on the Euler problems, and just refer the video on Euler problems that is there. The next question is about deemed university. Deemed university is university, deemed deemed to be a university, and that's the core idea that we are trying to give under deemed university. The next question is on the questions of virtual situation given in a question regarding logic. So when you have a question on a virtual situation, it's pretty interesting when you are solving that question, because you have to consider or understand some of the rationales behind before solving that question, and once you have that in mind, you can already work on that. The next question is video and classroom communication. We don't have it yet, but yes, those are kind of direct questions that are asked. The next question was relation between quasi-experiment, experiment and ex post facto. So experiment, as I said, you have a control group and an experimental group, and you bring in certain thing and experiment on it. Let's say you want to see the impact of drug on the effect of drug on a group of people. So on one group you won't give the drug, on the other group you would give the drug, and see whether the effects are there or not. So you have a control group and an experimental group that's there. And under quasi-experimental, quasi means resembling. So quasi-experimental basically resembles the real experiment, but it is not exactly a real experiment because you don't have a random sampling. And under ex post facto method, as I said, you do the thing only after it has happened. Pooja has a question about important topics for polity higher education. So we have already covered those under the expected series questions, so you can just refer that. In case you have still doubts, you can let us know. Okay, just a second, I am missing your links. There are so many comments coming up. Okay, the central universities, you have the list there on the website and the study material as well, so you can just refer it. Vijaya, all the videos related to communication and all other videos are available in the playlist for communication, net paper 1, so you can just go on and refer the paper 1 videos. Autonomous and deemed difference is very, very important. Autonomous is really important. So autonomous is bringing in autonomy under policy making, administration, financial matters, so relating to the curriculum of the universities, the formulation of the course, bringing in finances. So all those would be under autonomous, but deemed to be university is what is basically working or striving towards to be a university. The next is deductive and inductive statements. So as I said, inductive statements, you have specific statements. From those specific statements you try to move towards a general statement. However, under deductive you have a general statement that is given and you work down towards a specific answer. Pawan has a question, about type 1 and type 2 error. We have covered that in a separate video on hypothesis testing, type 1, type 2 error, you can refer that. Autonomy of university has been discussed in the AP set paper 2018 that we have recently solved, and there was a question, so again it's important for you as well. For your net, the 62 universities which have become autonomous, the name of it is again important, so that's again important. Aman has a question, there is a little confusion between Hindi and English, what should we prefer? So that's a common thing that students usually do. Then you have the question paper usually in English and Hindi, 2 languages. Now sometimes when it comes to reading comprehension, I would give that as a good example. Sometimes students are unable to understand the passage in English, so what they can do is they can just quickly go on to the Hindi version, read that if you are fluent in Hindi, then you can see that some of the words that you are unable to understand in the English, you can catch up from the Hindi phrases. So that's how you can work on that. Okay, so that's something that we work out here. The next is sampling, the types. So we have covered the types of the sampling in a separate video. Identifying the research. Now this is important, like I have one of the questions that was interesting here. Research problem is related to heterogeneous population. Now what would be the suitable method? In a heterogeneous population, I cannot do a random sampling, because if I do a random sampling, there could be a case that all the samples are collected only from a homogeneous set, but let's say within this population I have this too as the different set. So I want to have some population that's collected from this and some from this. So for that I would need a stratified sampling, but yes, it should be random within the stratified, and therefore I say it would be a random stratified sampling which would be best suitable when the research problem is related to a heterogeneous set of population. The next question was which of the following is not a source of pollution in the soil? Transport, agriculture, thermal and hydropower. Now here transport and thermal, you have burning of the coal that takes place, you have soot that is released and ultimately that falls on the ground, so it leads to soil pollution. You have agriculture, that's on the soil, so you have soil pollution that's there. Hydropower would be the apt answer here, because considering the fact that you have now when we talk about hydropower, it definitely causes pollution. So how it causes pollution? In the upstream you have the pollutants that are collected, and when they are moving on to the downstream, the flow of the river is restrained, so it would be collected in the downstream as well. Again, because of the stagnancy of the water that's there and the dead decayed material that's falling into it, what would happen is the methane would be produced, and that would again lead to pollution. So all of these would ultimately cause pollutions, and again you would have to have a minimum ecological or an environmental flow level that has to be maintained for the water level to have a kind of sustainable flow that could be seen, and if that is not there, it could lead to pollution, but not definitely soil pollution, because you would have methane that would be released into the atmosphere. The next question is which of the following sources of energy has maximum potential in India? Now the person says there are different answers in different books. The right answer here we believe would be the solar energy. The reason being, India lies in the tropical region, and India is one of the founding members of the International Solar Alliance, that is the ISA, and we have many countries along in the tropical region which are now part of it. Subhajit has a question about GIS sensors, so that's related to your geography, that's not part of paper 1, so we would be definitely considering that and covering that. Sushma has again a question on T-score, Z-score and Stanton score, so all this is part of psychology, we will be covering it separately. Noori has a question about inductive and deductive, we have covered that. Hydrometeorological hazards are those hazards which are related to both water and climate, so that's how we take the name hydrometeorological. Then there are questions, that's the only question that was there. Now coming on to the next is, there was one of the questions that was asked, what is the difference between the CSIR net and the CBSE net? So CSIR net is mainly for the sciences, you have 5 streams there up, and CBSE net is mainly for social sciences, humanities and some subjects from sciences like electronics and computers which are not part in the CSIR branch. However, there are some overlaps that you can have for CBSE and CSIR subjects. So like geography is one of those, you have earth science and geography as one of the categories there. Raju has a question about types of definition, lexical, persuasive, stipulative. We have covered a separate lecture on definitions, you can just go there and refer that. The pollutants and the impact of the pollutant, there is another request on that. So yes, we have the list of indoor household pollutants that we have covered, so again that would be available, you can just refer that. English literature, Edwin has one of the questions, so on doorstep tutor you have the solutions for the past years English literature paper, you can refer that. The next question is by Sheetal, research paper and research article. That's what I said. Yes, these are different. So you have the research thesis, you have the research article, the journal, the thesis writing and the project report, and these all terms are important. Just make an idea that you are talking about those. Regarding the question of logic, which is a strong sentence type question, you can just refer the class on arguments that we have taken up, statement and assumption that we have taken up. Under that we have talked about how to select a particular assumption or how to think whether it is implied or not. Similarly goes for conclusion questions. So we have to say whether for the argument question, whether it's a kind of strong argument or weak argument. Based on the statements we have to judge whether it's very directly related, closely related to it or not. Then you have dissertation and thesis. So dissertation is a kind of smaller version of the thesis, that's there. Seminar and workshop, Garima, we would be bringing it live shortly, so maximum by today evening or tomorrow you would have the videos there. Shivani has a question whether we should solve the DI questions first or in the end. That totally depends on to your interest. If you are good at DI, you can take a chance to solve it first. If you feel you are not good at DI, you can leave it for the later on. Difference between bibliography and reference and symposium, seminar, conference, again coming a lot of requests. So as I said, we have already covered a lecture, it would be live shortly. Supplementary pages of the thesis, Priyanka, implies the additional pages that you are putting up, that basically means the appendix pages. The link for the definitions, yes, it would be there in the Net Paper 1 playlist. We would also put it there. Palak has a question about stimulus response learning and a chain learning. Now this is again the part of your psychology, so I won't be touching it there. Shreya has a question about investment in reading comprehension. How much time should we devote? So investment for reading comprehension, I would suggest, should be not be more than 10 minutes. 5 minutes reading the passage, and then what I recommend is just skip through the passage once, read the questions, and then go again and read the passage. So that would better understand or better help you mark out the regions which you have to highlight or work upon carefully. Pollutants that cause cancer in human body. Yes, Rohini, we had solved it in the first, I guess you were late. So you can just refer that, the starting portion of the video, we have solved your doubt there. The very first question was yours anyways. So quick tricks for data interpretation, Nuri, we have covered in one of the separate classes on data interpretation, so that should be there. Next session would be after your exam. We would be bringing in the solutions, most probably on the day of exam or the next day. So most probably on the day of exam by night we would be able to bring in the solutions. Dipanshi has a question, OMR should be marked in the end or hand by hand. That again depends on you. If you are comfortable and if you are answering all the questions in the sequence, you can go hand by hand. If you are skipping up certain questions, it's preferable that you go in the end, but in the end you leave ample amount of time. Chetna has a question about e-way bill. We have covered it in the polity class today, so you can just refer that. Syllogism question for 3 statement and 4 conclusion, Ocean, is regarding Euler problems, and we have covered a separate lecture on Euler, that's EULER, you can refer that. Sandesh has a question about action, applied and fundamental. Yes, these 3 are different. So action research is bringing in an immediate specific solution to a problem to the point where you are, so you should be in the place of the problem where you are trying to solve it. Applied research is you are applying it to some aspects. Action research are usually a part of applied research, and basic research as working on the fundamental questions. The next question is by Mehul about assertion reason. So assertion reason, we have again a lecture where we have talked about how to solve questions on assertion reason. So just if you search assertion reason in the Examrace YouTube, you would find a video there. The idea is whenever you have the 2 statements, you have to first consider whether both the statements are correct or not, and in the second case think about it in such a way that this assertion is the cause or the explanation, this reason is an explanation for the assertion or not. Let's say a simplest way is, if I put because, this is because this was there, I am able to answer that correctly or not. So that's how we solve it. Raju has a question that we have already covered in one of the classes on aptitude, so just refer that. Formative and summative test we have covered in the class on measurement and evaluation, so again refer that. For DI, Palak, I request you have at least 10 to 15 minutes in hand, because the sections on environment, polity and computers could be very quick. Sheikh has a question about F test, T test and Z test. Those are not part of your paper 1, so I won't be touching it here itself. So those are the questions that you need to understand, okay. So that's how that was there. So I hope your queries are answered. Wish you a very good luck for your exam. Don't get nervous. We would definitely have a kind of good motivation for you before the examination. Keep working hard, bring in, come up with good colors and do contact back. Have a great